Derek, you're good to start.
All right, I want to welcome everyone to the Kenmore and Cornwall Watermain and Pavement Replacement Project Town Meeting number 2. Next slide. First off, I think we'll go through introduction.
Want to listen?
Matt, if you want to kick things off.
Hello, everyone. Matt Baumgarten, City Manager for the City of Berkeley. I appreciate spending some time here. We have definitely heard from you guys, and you'll see as we go through this conversation here, we have taken a ton of your guys' comments, try to find you guys good, reliable information, answer a lot of these questions, and address a lot of your concerns. We have really gathered a fantastic panel this evening of experts and everybody that had a little hand in making this big project and getting it to this point. So you're in good hands this evening. Myself and Tori Mathis will be watching the chat, which is always available and open to each of you guys. So again, just very appreciative of you guys making the time to be here this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Kane. I'm Director of Public Safety, and happy to be here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm Derek Schuler. I am the Director of Public Works. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening.
I'm Sean Young from the Berkeley Department of Public Works. I'll be happy to help whoever I can.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tori Mathis, Community Engagement Officer. I am monitoring chat as Matt has shared. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I think Roland's having some technical difficulties with sound, but he is on. You can see the video. He's Vice President, Partner of HRC, Partner in Charge of the Berkeley account. My name is Eddie Zmish. I'm Project Manager for HRC.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan DeBono. I'm a project engineer with HRC and will probably be running the majority of the presentation. Hopefully it's not too repetitive as it was in the first town hall meeting, but I think it's a lot of good information this time around too.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Nasita. I also work at Hubbell Roth and Clark. I work in the transportation department, and thank you everyone for your interest in attending the town hall meeting. And we are excited to show some of the design and some of the background of the project.
All right, thank you, everyone. We can go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and kick things off with a bit of an overview of where we're heading tonight. Some of these items we did cover in the first town hall, but maybe you weren't able to join us, and we'll run through a lot of the repetitive items fairly quick. So, but project scope, project goals, homeowner sewer responsibilities, project consideration, a general review, the schedule, and then we'll conclude with an open discussion as well as answering any questions you may have. Again, this meeting is set up between 6 and 7:30, so we hope to be able to run through everything in that period of time.
As a friendly reminder for everyone, please make sure that you're muted so that way we don't have any feedback.
Thank you, Tori. If we want to just jump back to that other slide real quick.
Yep. I apologize.
That's all right.
Lost my screen share here.
So we see you, Ryan, now.
Yep. Give me 1 second. I apologize.
That's all right. There we go. Thank you, Ryan. So I want to start off again, just to reiterate the scope of the project. And you can see from this drawing sort of the outline of the project limits. The yellow dotted line shows those limits. So you're looking at Kenmore north of 12, and then we follow the Cornwall bend all the way up to Webster Road. This is a full road reconstruction. So we're going to be putting in brand new curb and gutter, brand new asphalt pavement. The first item is that will be done is the new water main. So we are putting in a new 8-inch water main through the entire route. We're also putting in new drainage structures, all new sidewalks, all new drive approaches, and we are incorporating a green infrastructure component that that will help with our combined sewer system. So the goals, in looking at this project, we had several goals in mind. As many of you know, the reason that Kenmore and Cornwall was selected is because it rose to the top when we looked at the water main and road surface. When we kind of combine those ratings, this particular section of roadway rose to the top. So we've had the most breaks here, water main breaks over the last 5 years. So when the 6 areas that went to the top of the list, Kenmore, Cornwall rose to the top because of those number of water main breaks. So that was key for us in determining that this would be where we headed next. Again, we're upgrading driveways, sidewalks, all the drainage structures. We do have that green infrastructure improvement that we're happy about, the rain garden there at the corner, which will reduce stormwater runoff. Another goal was to increase the amount of pervious surface. So impervious surface like pavements obviously lead to more runoff and more water in our combined sewer system. So we wanted to try to do what we could to create as much green space and preserve the trees as we could. Trees are also responsible for taking in an incredible amount of water. And so that's also important to us. And Ryan, I think this is my transition to you. Ryan, you're on mute, but
Man, it's like I'm a rookie on this.
you're fine.
All right, thanks, Derek. Again, my name is Ryan DeBono. I was the project engineer on the job. Some of you probably recognize me from the first meeting, so hopefully we're not too repetitive, but it's a lot of the same information. We're presenting it in a little different way here. So as Derek mentioned, this project, the main purpose of the project is replacement of a 6-inch water main that runs all the way from 12 Mile to Webster Road. We will be replacing that with a new 8-inch water main, all ductile iron. And with that comes all new service lines to every house. We will be running from the main in the road to the stop box at the right-of-way line. And if there is, we will also be replacing any lead service lines encountered. And that would be from the road all the way to the resident water meter. So again, if anybody's aware of a lead service line in their house, please let the city know so that way we can make sure it's accounted for when we start construction. And that will be the full replacement of the lead line is paid for by the city. That would there be no responsibilities to the residents in that case. And any and all shutdowns of the water main and water services will be communicated in several different ways, and we'll give plenty of notice at any anticipated shutdowns. There's going to be the citywide emails that go out, giving everybody a heads up. There will be the construction flyers that you've already seen. And so we'll try to give everybody as much heads up as possible for any inconveniences such as a water shutdown. So with new water main also comes new driveways, sidewalks, roadway and drainage structures. So as part of the project, essentially from sidewalk to sidewalk across the road will be all replaced with new asphalt, new concrete drive approaches, 6 inches of concrete, all new sidewalk and ADA ramps. And again, this is going to be, it's a very intrusive process for this, but we mitigate the best we can. We give plenty of notices for when your driveways will be replaced. Because, when the new concrete's poured, you have to typically we like to give 7 days for it to fully cure before we give access to it again. So there'll be, we'll work with the city in providing temporary parking passes for overnight on adjacent streets and then down out of the construction zone on Kenmore and Cornwall. And we'll also be providing new drainage structures along the whole route. We're adding a few more than that's there currently to try to help with some drainage issues that we've discovered, and try to mitigate any sort of ponding in the roadways. So as Derek touched on earlier, at the fork in the Kenmore and Cornwall, we are installing some new green infrastructure. Essentially, it's referred to as a bioswale, so it would be plenty of different variety of plants and flowers that they're water-loving plants. And what this does is this area acts as like a small detention area where kind of all the localized runoff flows into this area, and it's slowly filtered down through the plants in the soil and the planting mixture that we use. And it just helps alleviate that initial runoff from going directly into the sewer system. And then this also filters the stormwater, and then it goes into an under drain that's located down the center of the bioswale and back out into the sewer system. And all the disturbed lawn areas will be replaced with 4 inches of topsoil and sod. And again, it's the contractor's responsibility in that case to provide the first 14 days of watering, and that it would be transferred to the resident on their section of their lawn. So although our total road section is getting a little narrower, we're also providing a full 6-inch curb through the whole project, which isn't there currently. Through the years, there's been overlays on the road, and that takes away from the curb height, exposed curb height. So I think the average on this job now is like 3 inches. So when that's all replaced, we'll have a full 6-inch curb height, and we'll have a full curb and gutter section there to encourage the stormwater to be stored in the gutter temporarily while, we want to kind of store the water on the road before overwhelming the sewer system. So that helps decrease the first flush and the initial rush of water down the catch basins and into the sewer system, which will give the system time to drain and reduce the likelihood of any sort of backups in the sewers. Also, one of the main goals of this project, Derek touched on too, is to preserve all the mature trees. And I don't need to run down every single benefit of that trees have, but we highlighted a few of them here. Some of them, we have 90 trees in the project area, and a lot of those are mature tall trees, and that we've set up our design to try to preserve any and all of them. And the mature trees obviously will provide a benefit in your cooling costs in the summertime by the shade. They absorb groundwater, stormwater, and they there's a lot of volume of water that's held on the leaves of the trees as well during heavy rain events. So all those benefits help in preventing the stormwater from overwhelming the sewer and providing, it's all mitigating risk of potential water in basements. And here are some tree resources. I think this presentation will be posted online, and everybody will be able to visit these links and read up yourself on some of the benefits of trees and how they impact stormwater.
Ryan, real quick, if I could, I do want to thank the Berkeley Tree Board for many of these resources. They were instrumental in providing a lot of these documents to us about the positive impacts of trees relative to stormwater runoff. Thanks, Ryan.
And obviously, I'm going to touch on these already, but with more impervious surface such as pavement, sidewalks, driveways, all things like that, that gives you less opportunity for infiltration, which means more water gets into the sewer faster, which increases the risk again for, potential floodings during very heavy rainstorms, or the first flush of oils and, greases and things like that on the road that will be, that's washed into the, pollutants into the rivers and the lakes, which obviously is not the case in this one since it's a combined system, but it's just overall not great for the environment. We want to encourage the stormwater to, absorb into the ground and the grass and less in the sewer. So I guess touching on this, the sewers and the sanitary sewer leads, every resident has a sewer lead that connects to the main out in the street. And this has been on plenty of homeowner notices already up until this point. People, it should be pretty repetitive at this point, but we want to encourage all the residents to have their sewers inspected if they believe that they're not functioning properly. And that could be, having a plumber come out, a licensed plumber, and they can videotape the lines. I mean, a lot of times there's, roots, or sometimes there's breaks or offsetting joints in the pipes, and that could potentially lead to your basement flooding as well. So residents, we're strongly encouraged to do that prior to construction, because it's better to fix it now before we put a brand new road in, because then that'd be the cheapest time to do it. And we'd also encourage a backwater valve to be placed in the basement as well, if that's that's always an option, to have a second measure of protection against a sewer backup. And again, those have been handed out on the homeowner notices, and I think we've had several residents that have already had theirs inspected, and there's been some problems discovered. So thank you to everybody who has, and then it's better to get that taken care of here in the next few weeks before construction begins. Now I'm going to hand it over to Nick Nacita to take over from the project traffic perspective and the public safety note, and the public safety, and how we've kind of came to our decisions for the parking standards and the fire lanes and all that fun stuff. So take it away, Nick.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for attending the town hall discussion. We really appreciate your interest in the project. My name is Nick Nacita. I work for Hubble, Roth & Clark, and we've been working with the city and public safety as a collaborative effort to mitigate some of the conflicts that public safety is facing on navigating through the city. Some of the project considerations here, multiple things were considered when designing for the reconstruction of Kenmore and Cornwall. My portion focuses on the public safety aspect of it. And then Ryan will then further discuss a little more about saving the trees and some of the concerns that were with the driveway. So he's going to show that there is a adequate driveway access. And then some of our findings that we were looking at from roads with similar operations, we're excited to share with you. And then also examine some of the existing conditions and focus on if we were not to do anything at all. Next slide. So it goes without saying that public safety is an important factor in every community. Public safety, this includes the fire department, law enforcement, emergency medical responders. So basically any entity that could be tagged to a 911 call. So it's important for the road network to accommodate these emergency vehicles. And these emergency vehicles can include fire trucks, ambulances, police vehicles, and the focus is on public safety, but this could also include just some of your local delivery trucks, such as say your Amazon delivery, which is very, very common these days, or FedEx or UPS. So basically just providing access to all these vehicles, focusing on public safety, but also the other local deliveries as well. So the clear roadway access for these vehicles, we're learning throughout the city is an issue, and especially when there are parked vehicles on the roadway, it becomes a very common issue and obstruction for public safety to try to navigate through the city.
And Nick, if I could jump in here for a second. I think a lot of people aren't familiar with what public safety is. So right now we have officers on the street in patrol cars. We're all cross-trained as police officers, firefighters, and medical first responders. So if we get a fire run, the officers on the street go immediately to the fire in patrol cars. And then we have 3 apparatus that we house here at the station. Typically at least 1 or 2 will respond just about every fire. And then we also have automatic aid with Oak Park, Beverly Hills, and Huntington Woods. So a common working house fire, we will have up, usually at a minimum of 3 or 4 of our cars, up to 10. And then we could also have anywhere from minimum of 2 up to 6 fire apparatus on the street. Not to be dramatic, but seconds count for us. We recently had last year we had a case where we had a house fire on Thomas, I believe, where there was someone trapped in the 2nd floor, and our response time is amazing in our cars, but our trucks are where all our tools are. So in that case, there was someone trapped in the 2nd floor of a home that we needed ladders for. Obviously, our cars don't have ladders, so we need ladders. We need hoses. We need obviously the water supply. We need our self-contained breathing apparatus. So our trucks are our toolboxes. So we clearly have to have those as soon as possible. I was just, we were required to drive a certain amount of time in our trucks, in each of our 3 trucks yearly. And one of our assignments was to drive through this section of the city. And I was driving down Kipling the week before last in our squad, which is our smallest, shortest, most narrow truck. And there was parking allowed on both sides of the street. And they were doing some tree service, and I couldn't get down the street. In that case, I could wait because I was just driving. I was just getting some time behind the wheel. So it wasn't an emergency, but seconds do count. And as Nick said, this is citywide. We have some. We're trying to make a comprehensive plan to make things consistent. Quite honestly, right now we have streets that are wide enough for parking on both sides of the street. That only has parking on one side, and vice versa. So public safety is by far the biggest part of this, but also we also want to be able to make sure our garbage trucks, our DPW trucks can get down the street. And with our tower, which is the apparatus that's pictured right there, we also have to worry about height. That's tall enough to where we quite honestly will hit overhanging branches. So we have to be able to pretty much stay towards the middle of the street. And our trucks cannot leave the road. Our cars, we will park in driveways typically by the scene, or we'll pull up on the grass. Our trucks cannot leave the road, any of them. So those are all considerations we have.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Chief, for the feedback. And to further to the Chief's point, that we have listened to some of the residents' concerns about parking. And as the Chief mentioned, every second counts. And there's a couple comments about, the neighborhood's been lucky enough that you really haven't had to deal with any fire trucks coming down your road. And, we hope that continues to be the same way. But if an emergency vehicle does need to access the road, that's what we're focusing on. And as this Chief mentioned, every second counts. And because of that, there are parking restrictions that do exist on similar roads, such as some of the St. John Woods roads. And those roads do have some parking restrictions. And later on in the presentation, Ryan will go more in detail about some of the similarities and how those operate as well. And then I also wanted to point out there is a ordinance out there that doesn't allow for any overnight parking. So there is no on-street parking between 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So basically parking resets each day. And then in addition to that, when there is a snow emergency, there is also no on-street parking allowed. So the two main variables that we were considering to mitigate some of the obstructions that public safety faces on the roadway is we looked at the existing roadway widths and also the vehicle widths that need to access these roads. So we reviewed the entire network and we found that the roads pretty much range between 22 feet to 28 feet. One common term that you're going to hear tonight is clear roadway width. So I just wanted to kind of break down what that term means. So that's basically the measurement from the face of curb to the face of curb. So you can see from that picture at the bottom, that is taking the measurement from just right inside the face of that curb all the way across the street to the other side of the curb. So we're looking at that distance just because typically when you park your vehicle, if you on the passenger side, so the right side of the vehicle, you pretty much hug the right side of that or the face of that curb, unless maybe you have a teenager at home and maybe they park on the curb or on the grass. But for the most part, generally speaking, for parking, on-street parking, your passenger side is right up against that face of curb. And then, so we're trying to measure that distance to consider how many vehicles can be parked on the street and still allow for an emergency vehicle to pass. So the design vehicles that we were looking at is you can see the fire truck to the right. So that has a width of 8.5 feet. And then the other design vehicle that we were considering is just your typical truck, which is your F-150 that you can see a picture above. And that is 7.5 feet wide. And that includes the width of the vehicle along with the driver's side mirror, which is approximately 7.5 feet wide. So keeping the fire truck and the F-150 in mind, it was found through a collaborative effort between the city, public safety, and HRC that there are two problematic scenarios for emergency vehicles. The first scenario, which I won't dwell too much on because this really just applies to a handful of alleyways throughout the city. But if you look on the far left figure, that when there is no vehicles parked on the road, emergency vehicles have no conflict accessing point A to point B. But if there is a vehicle parked on the road, then it does become a problem for a fire truck to navigate through. And that's the first figure on the left, the red circle. And then I really want to focus on is the middle figure. So this is roadways with a clear roadway width between 20 and 25 feet. So when there is one vehicle, on-street vehicle parked, fire safety, fire trucks, ambulances have no issue passing by, but it becomes a huge problem. And as the chief mentioned in some of his real life situations where when there is two vehicles parked back there side by side, it can become a huge issue for a fire truck or ambulance, some of those wider vehicles to pass through. And then on the far right, road widths that are greater than 25 feet, we determined that have no issue for the a fire truck or other vehicles or delivery drivers, ambulances to pass through.
Nick, if I could add also, that is that's just driving there. Obviously, when we get there, whatever apparatus, all three of our apparatus can pump the same volume of water. Whatever one we're using to pump, we need a 4-inch supply line from the hydrant, at least one hydrant, if not two, depending on how big the fire is, and at least two attack lines. So there are hose that we have to navigate around parked cars also. So, you know, driving there is one thing, but once you get there, you need some room to operate also. We also have outriggers for the tower if we had to put that up to be able to reach a roof also.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Chief. And then going back to the middle figure for the parking, it would be no parking on the fire hydrant side to the Chief's point, to allow for fire safety to access the hydrants and other utilities that they would need. So the parking would be, the no parking would be on the fire hydrant side of the road. So
Nick, if I could real quick, it's
Yeah.
Derek. I'm just going to step away for a quick second. We had the DPW alarm go off, so I'm just going to run into the yard real quick and I'll be right back, everybody.
So after considering the existing roadway widths and scenarios that could create conflict for emergency vehicles, a collaborative decision with the city, public safety, and Hummel, and Clark was made to standardize no parking requirements throughout the city. So based on the vehicle widths of the passenger truck and the fire truck, and also focusing on the ability for the emergency vehicles to pass through them, we developed 3 parameters depending on how wide the roadway is. So the first one is no parking will be allowed on either side of the road. And this is applicable to the figure on the left from the previous slide when roads are less than 20 feet. This only applies to a handful of alleyways throughout the city. So most of the roads are at least 22 feet. So for the most part, the second bullet and the third bullet, the roads 20 to 25 feet or roads greater than 25 feet, this is really what applies to most of the city network. And then moving to the second parameter, no parking will be allowed on the fire hydrant side for roads that are between 20 and 25 feet. And if you remember from the middle figure, that's when you have the problem when you have 2 vehicles parked back to back, 2 trucks, and it was determined that a fire truck cannot get through. And then for the last parameter, roads that are greater than 25 feet, it was determined that when you have 2 parked vehicles on both sides of the roads, that is a wide enough distance for a emergency vehicle to pass through. And these no parking requirements, as the chief hit on previously, that these are going to be implemented throughout the city this year, and locations that currently don't meet, that are not wide enough to allow for an emergency vehicle with with both sides of the street with parking, then you will start seeing some signs, which you see to the right, which is the no parking and fire lane text below it to indicate that the fire hydrant side of the road is now going to become no parking to allow for those emergency vehicles to pass through. And then with that, again, thank you everyone for your time. Hopefully that clarified some of the no parking concerns that we were listening from the residents from the previous town hall meeting. And we'll be around after the presentation for some Q&A that answer any other questions or concerns that you may have. And with that, I will transition it back to Ryan to further discuss some of the other considerations that we had when designing for the reconstruction.
Thanks, Nick. So I guess with those widths that Nick presented in the previous slide, touching on our one of the project goals was to maintain the trees for all the benefits that they provide for stormwater and the environment, and the shade for the cooling season. Again, the goal was to maintain as much of that mature tree canopy as you see in that picture as there is today. And due to the tight right of way of the road, some of those trees are already fairly close to the curb line. And based on our survey, there's approximately 87 trees within our project limits in the right of way that could potentially be impacted based on the width of road selected. So this little table kind of gives an idea of the width of excavation required for to obtain a certain clear roadway width. So this project that we're proposing that was bid is our 22.5 feet clear road width. So meaning the excavation width will be 24.5 feet approximately, which is, it's a little less than the current back-to-back curb width is out there today. So in doing that and not expanding that width, we're able to, remove only the trees with health impacts on approximately 5 of them. Now, as that width gets wider and wider, we become, our excavators and the machines are digging closer and closer to the tree trunks. That damages the tree roots, and that doesn't guarantee it doesn't necessarily guarantee the tree's gonna die, but it puts them at risk. And that might mean they wilt away over the next few years. That might mean they die next year. So the whole purpose behind our decision on the width was to mitigate as much risk as possible to the trees. So if we were to excavate and put the road back at the current width, we'd be, I guess these 40 trees doesn't mean that 40 trees are going to be removed or die, but 40 trees would be within approximately 3 feet or less to our excavation. So if you imagine an excavator digging within 3 feet of a tree trunk, it's pretty close, and that's gonna damage a lot of roots. So again, and then to get up to 26 feet clear roadway width, which would be required for, that'd be the width for, double-sided parking. That would be up to almost, 60 trees could be impacted based on that width, which is, the majority of the trees out there, 2/3. So some more considerations when selecting the width is, there was a lot of concern from the last meeting with being able to safely back out of driveways when cars are parked on the other side of the street. We use the turning templates, some of our design software, as you see on the screen there. That's an example showing that, there's no conflicts and you're able to safely back out with a vehicle on the opposite side of the road. And, this is kind of the worst case scenario too. These were 2 large pickup trucks modeled here. So that's not gonna be the case every day out there. And, again, there's no conflicts. There's enough room to be able to maneuver that at a 22.5 clear road width.
Yeah, and Ryan, if I may, just real quick, that's like you said, the worst case scenario, but the other side, if it doesn't have any parking, then there's no conflict at all, for like the other side of the residents trying to back out.
Correct. Yep. And we also have a fun video here. We hired a professional stunt driver to, as an example of, this is on Princeton Road within the city. And this is a similar road width to what we'd be putting back here. And this just, another example of there being enough room to safely back in and out of a driveway. So that video you just saw, that was on Princeton, and there is, throughout the city, there's plenty of roads that are less than 25 feet wide. Some examples are Earl Mount, Princeton, like you just saw in the video in Wiltshire. And so if anyone wanted to get a feel for what that width feels like, feel free to drive the roads. There's already roads out there that don't allow parking on one side due to this width. And there hasn't been any issues due to leaf pickup, garbage pickup, or any sort of other functionality. And again, like as Nick mentioned in the earlier slides, everything resets at night anyway due to the no parking ordinance overnight. And most of the parking also is, there's a lot of larger driveways, a lot of garages, and that mitigates most of the need for on-street parking outside of, again, holidays and bigger events of that nature. So I guess one of the considerations too in this project is if we do nothing to the road. So currently the road is on the top of the list as to one of the worst pavement conditions in the city. And it's also along with the Watermain breaks, which is the highest number in the last 5 years. And that's why this project rose to the top of the list. Now, the current road width is 24 feet, face of curb to face of curb, so 24-foot clear roadway width, which would mean when the city implements the parking ordinance, which would be, I imagine this year, Nick's going to touch on that later, I believe. There's going to be one-sided parking regardless of the road condition in the Watermain condition. So again, this segment will continue to be the top priority for the city, but I guess this is the worst case scenario. And again, just to reiterate here, this the slide with the clear roadway width between 20 and 25 feet and the impacts that would have if a emergency vehicle had to make the rounds down the street and there was parking lot on both sides, it wouldn't quite make it.
And if I may, Ryan, real quick, like you said, the takeaway from the previous slide is if we do nothing, Kenmore currently falls in that middle bracket with the clear roadway width being 20 to 25 feet. So with it being 24 feet, without doing any reconstruction, without doing anything, later this year when the no parking ordinances do go into effect, there will be no parking on Kenmore on the fire hydrant side due to this new ordinance that will be implemented later this year.
Thank you, Nick. So quick overview here. I'll try to get through these next few slides pretty quickly to save some time for some questions. So the project that's currently been bid is to reconstruct the road at a total clear width of 22.5 feet. So that is 23.5 foot back of curb to back of curb, which if everybody remembers, the original design was 21 feet. So we've 21 foot back of curb to back curb. So we've increased the clear roadway width by 2.5 feet from the previous design. The city is listening to all the concerns, and we were able to get 2.5 additional feet without posing any serious impacts to the trees. Now, some care is going to have to be taken during construction, but that was a big that was a kind of a step in the right direction of a compromise. And again, this also preserves the trees, which is a good balance of saving the environmental needs and the benefits that the trees provide, as well as keeping the public safety in the forefront and making sure that there's adequate fire lanes and emergency vehicle lanes. And again, this provides safe width for driveway entry and exits, and maintains the benefits of the trees. So the overall schedule for the project, we received bids last Tuesday, the 22nd. So the contract will be awarded in April, and with anticipated start of construction in this spring. And if everything goes to plan, the project should wrap up the late fall of this year. And again, the signing report that Nick mentioned, the city ordinance, the report itself will be completed in the fall of this year, with implementation by the city to shortly follow. So that would be when the ordinance of the fire lane parking, no parking on one side of the road, would begin to take effect.
Yep, and again, that was just a collaborative effort between us at HRC, the city, and public safety for trying to standardize the no parking throughout the city.
If I could clarify too, that won't be an ordinance, that'll be by traffic control orders.
Yep. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chief. And again, the team will be continue posting updates, and on the Berkeley website, the link is right there. We'll also be distributing flyers as we get nearer to construction, trying to give everybody as much heads up to what's going on as possible. And again, there's a construction or frequently asked questions list that we created, and that's posted on the website as well. That's there's a lot of really good information on there about the project. So if I missed something in this presentation, it's definitely covered on the frequently asked questions. And if not, feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to fill you in the best we can. And that's it for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for sitting through that. I think we could open it up to kind of a question and answer session right now.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, I think it's a good time for questions. Tori, I don't know if you can help us with those. Is there anything in the chat as of yet?
Ryan, do you mind stop sharing your screen so I can see everyone?
Yes.
All right. Right now, I'm not seeing any hand raised. As a reminder, if you'd like, there's a couple different ways you can raise your hand, or at least acknowledge that you have a question. If you show your video, I can see your screen, see your hands raised that way. Another way that you can do this for participants, if you go under the participants tab, hover over your name, there is an option to raise your hand in that function. The other way to find that is what's called the reactions tab. It's on the bottom of your screen. You can select raise a hand from that function as well. But I will go ahead and take a look at the screen. Does anybody have any questions? I see Carrie and Gary kind of showed their screen. Do you guys have questions? Oh, let's go ahead and unmute you. Just unmute. There you go.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for the very thorough and detailed presentation. I think that a lot of these big questions were answered, and how we came up with the road widths, or how you guys came up with the road widths, which I think was very helpful. And the graphics obviously showing, how the roads are impacted by safety and different vehicles in both directions. I think that, makes a lot of sense with, everyone's more detailed descriptions. You take him the other. A couple other things though, I had questions about were the drive approach, the max width, or what that's going to be. I know you guys probably have some standards that you use for everybody, and basically, what that width is versus, let's say you have a 10-foot wide drive. So what is your approach width at the road is one of them.
Yep. I can answer that real quick. The approaches were established were the width of the existing driveway was matched at the right of way. And then there's a 2-foot flare either side to the road.
Okay.
So there, I guess it would vary depending on the existing width of, the driveways. But we met what's there. Well, I guess our minimum is 10 feet, but if it's wider, we met the wider width.
Okay, yeah, because I guess we have like a brick portion on a part of our driveway. So would that be considered? Because, when we moved here, the drive was small and they had put this brick in. So let's say the concrete's 8 feet and the brick's 2 feet. So would we get the 10 feet drive and then 2 feet on both sides?
Yep, correct.
Another thing that I was curious about is if the DDA has been involved in any of this research as well, because with reducing the parking on the K1, Kenmore 1, and all of the other roads that are adjacent the city center, granted, we're all going to be losing some parking here no matter what the road widths are, but I was wondering if consideration was taken or examined that maybe just the main roads adjacent to 12 Mile for the first block would have or be wide enough for double-sided parking, because a lot of these businesses already park on these roads as well to support their businesses. Or if they were even asked, how this is going to affect them, or if that was examined at all, because planning wise, I think that it's maybe a real good idea to look at, because, and not only affecting the businesses, but also all of the events that we have downtown and along 12 Mile and the main corridor through 12 Mile from Coolidge to Greenfield. So I don't know if anybody can answer that.
Yeah, I can. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
And Nick, I can speak from a city perspective. We did work to consider every single user of that street, whether it's temporary, whether it's event driven, or whether it's somebody who lives on the block itself. So we did run through as many different possible scenarios of who would be using that street. So the DDA director wasn't at the table during these planning meetings, but I'm a board member. And I sat through those meetings, and I can tell you we did have a very broad-based conversation of the impacts of all the parking strategy.
So were all the businesses on 12 Mile notified and questioned about, or even notified that this was going to be affecting them in any way?
No, we didn't address it that way. We did not address it that way. No, we didn't pull them into that. Our focus was largely the residents along that street. It wasn't necessarily the business traffic. We didn't reach out to them and say, hey, what do you think about something that's happening in the neighborhoods? We largely we appealed to this group, and we talked to you guys directly about it now in these two meetings.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like in talking to basically a very high percentage of the people on Kenmore 1 are opposed to eliminating the parking on both sides for a number of reasons. And I think this is like another level of maybe community outreach that should be considered. Not only for just our corridor project, but also maybe even citywide, because when you're talking about taking 2 parking spaces away from each home, and talking about the value of that, as we've discussed before in previous meetings, let's say Chicago or any city, really, you can't really put a price on parking, or trees. We love the trees, but parking is very important for us as well. And I think that, I think we're focusing very narrowly to this project and these 70 houses, where as a community, I think that maybe it should be more of a community discussion. I don't know. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from on it. Like I said, our focus has largely been the impacts on the neighborhoods themselves. Our parking standards are created in such a way that we don't depend on neighborhood streets as being primary parking areas for our businesses. I understand on Kenmore, it does happen with the overflow on the strip center there. But we, as much as possible, we try to prohibit and provide other spaces for our commercial business visitors. They're not supposed to be depending upon the neighborhood to accommodate that.
If I could add also, sorry to interrupt, this kind of, our plan is quite a bit of community outreach when this is implemented citywide. We weren't ready for that yet, but because of this change in the road, it kind of pushed up our timetable on just this street for right now. We spent most of our time around the schools because that's a huge safety issue. We have a lot of problems around the schools. So there will be a lot of outreach. It's just this had to push up our timetable, quite honestly, before we were ready, but we didn't want to we wanted to make the changes while it's happening and not surprise everybody down the road, especially when this is new construction.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to say again, I think that the second presentation, I think had it been given the first meeting, I think would have, been a lot much better received, I think, as a whole. Another thing that I was also concerned about.
If I may, I want to give you guys, everybody on this call, a ton of credit for the fact that this answered so many more questions, because we got those questions from you guys.
Good.
You guys really drove the content for this, and for that, everyone that had a hand in putting this together is really, really grateful. So thank all of you for stepping up and asking those questions, because they were good. It gave us the opportunity to give some insight into how we get to this point. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that this is well received, because we knew what the interest areas were. So I just want to give a quick thank you for that.
Thanks. A couple of other quick things. Was the community development consulted in this at all? In this project, or? Anyone?
I didn't want to speak before Derek did, so he went on mute on that.
Sorry about that, Matt. So yes, going back to the early stages, that community development was involved in the planning of this. We kept them abreast of the project. We've had some turnover there, admittedly, but I did keep the director abreast of the project.
Yeah. And we have an interim serving in a temporary capacity, who we've also is a planning professional themselves, and we've been keeping them up to date on this as well.
Thanks. And then one last thing, I guess, is I know you're probably not into the schedule yet, but when do you think we'll foresee a schedule, construction schedule? And are you planning on starting at like 12 Mile and working north, or, just kind of when that might happen off a maybe quick schedule, if you have any ideas?
Yeah, Gary, more to come soon on that. So once we actually award it to the contractor, they'll be responsible for providing us with a detailed schedule.
Okay.
at which point we can share that with residents. We've talked in broad terms, spring, finishing in the fall, those sort of things. But as soon as we have that information from the contractor, we'll share that certainly with the residents. We do expect, again, although we haven't seen any details yet, Ryan, I think it's fair to assume we do expect, kind of moving from 12 Mile to the north.
Okay. Just asking because I know a lot of people have been trying to find plumbers and get things looked at and examined and, kind of get things taken care of before any of the roadway work happens, so I guess the sooner that we can be notified, the better,
Yeah.
That's a great point, Gary. And as soon as we have a schedule, we will be sharing that with the residents for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Nancy. I just asked you to unmute. Want to go ahead and speak?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thank you. So we've been talking about the sewer line issue and you've been recommending that homeowners should have their lines evaluated and checked out in advance of the work starting. But I guess I'm wondering, since I'm not an expert in this, is I would think with these houses are all in the 80-year-old range. They're older houses. And I'm just wondering, I would think a certain amount of roots might be expected in these houses if you have your original sewer lines. But how do you know, like at what point does it constitute there's a problem or an issue that should be resolved when you're not experiencing any issues in your home? So, because I would think you should have a certain amount of roots maybe in the seams of it, but as long as it's not blocking it, maybe it's not an issue that needs to be addressed.
That's a great question, Nancy. And the answer is really, as a homeowner myself who has to snake a line because of roots, the roots only get in because there is, some type of defect in the pipe, right? You've either got a separated joint, you've got a crack, they don't break their way in. There's a separation there that causes those roots to get in. So, when you make that decision about, is it time to replace the pipe? It's a difficult call. But I think what you can do as a homeowner is that video, having a plumber do that pretty inexpensive video to show you that line, to talk to even a couple plumbers, I think is your best bet to make that decision. Certainly, to your point, everybody that may deal with roots, that doesn't mean that necessarily you need to replace your pipe, but it certainly could. And let that video show you, you can see by the videos if you've got a pretty significant separation, that's taking a lot of soil versus something that's a little tighter that's going to give you more time. The other piece of it is, the homeowners are responsible from the home all the way up to including the connection to the main. If you don't have an issue near the main or under the road, obviously that's going to give you a little more peace of mind, I guess, right? Because if you happen to have issues maybe closer to the home, those repairs in the future wouldn't be impacted by what we're doing. The focus of encouraging folks to look at their lines is to look at that connection and the piece that's under the road, because we know that for a homeowner to have the cost of digging up that new road when we're all said and done, that's going to be very expensive. So, Nancy, that's kind of a roundabout way of answering it, but I really think the video tells the story. These videos and the technology now really does paint the picture pretty well, and you can get a pretty good feel for your line.
Okay, thank you. I had one other little question about, you're probably aware that we have some flooding areas that we have on Kenmore and Cornwall during heavy rains. And I'm wondering if we can expect a significant improvement in those areas.
Yeah, and Ryan, feel free to jump in here, but so we're certainly going to be holding water in the road in the future, just as we are now, Nancy. So that aspect of this is not going to change. that is as a combined sewer system with very limited opportunities to change that, we still have to rely on holding water in the roads during intense rain events. There's no getting around it. But what we can do is we can hold it a little more efficiently, if that makes sense, Nancy. You don't have really much of any curb out there now. So when the water is ponding in the road, it's rising up and it's seeking that elevation, far up into the driveways and such. With a high back new curb, we're going to be able to keep that water tighter, if you will, in the roadway and hold it in that roadway. We're still going to hold the water. It's still an important part of what we're trying to accomplish, but we're holding it more efficiently. In addition, just by the project, we are introducing less runoff because we have more green space, because we have the rain garden also involved. So we're gonna leave this better than what we found it. Now, nobody here is going to guarantee anything, but I think we are doing our part where we can to try to improve our overall stormwater situation.
Okay.
And one thing to add to that, Derek, too, is we also have there's a new style of drainage structure inlets. So they're even more restrictive than is currently out there now. So that provides a little more chance for, promote storage on the road temporarily until the main, the main rush of drainage is passed, and give it more chance to have capacity in the sewer. So that was another benefit that's provided as part of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next in line, I have Ryan Duffy's. Let me ask. Sorry, I just muted you by accident. There you go.
All right. Hello, thanks everybody. Appreciate you taking my question or my comments. I kind of going back to those three graphics with regards to the width of the roads. I noticed that you said we were going to lose 40 trees or potentially lose 40 trees if we went to 26 feet. I'm not sure why you're measuring to the extra foot. I would say I'd say go to the 25 feet and see what we're going to do at that point. And I also, it's something I mentioned earlier in our first town hall meeting, but I wonder if there's not some sort of a way to kind of create a perimeter around the trees and maybe make it so you can't park in front of those trees, just rather than removing it all from one side, actually put a no parking sign where you have a little bump out to protect the roots of the trees. From the sounds of it, we're kind of splitting hairs saying that, okay, removing or getting within 3 feet is going to really damage the roots, but getting within 3.5 is going to cause us all sorts of problems and kill the trees. So, to me, it would make sense to sort of, scallop around the trees. If we really want to save the trees, then I would think that the majority of the road would be able to be moved out to that 25 feet, which would allow us to keep our parking, and that the only spots that you would lose then would be wherever there was a tree. So I think you would lose less parking spots. You would lose 40 rather than however many we're losing, 80, or what do we have, 72 houses on the street. So you're looking at 140. So if you could just, I guess, develop that width better. I get it, the 25-foot width, but it makes sense, and the graphics, But I think that there should be a little more creative method to try to maintain the parking and the trees at the same time. And I think just doing a bump out might be a solution for that.
So I can try to answer some of those. Try to remember your first question was why the extra foot, and that was because, you know, they need to when they're pouring the curb and everything, there's got to be room. You know, the excavate, it's a large machine is not going to dig that accurately, and there needs to be room behind the curb to set the forms, you know, and things of that nature. So
Right.
you know, it's going to be beyond the back of the curb. And
yeah, but that was saying to get a 26-foot wide street rather than a 25. So you said you needed 28 feet for excavation to get a 26-foot road width. And I'm saying you gave us a 1.5 feet back from the 21 feet. And now you're saying if we wanted to get an extra foot, which we're not asking for the extra foot, we're just asking for to bring it up to where we can park on the street. That's all I'm saying.
And thanks for that question there, Mr. Duffy. So I can answer part of that as well. So you're saying 25, but it's really 26. So I guess for argument's sake, you know, anything greater than 25, so it could be, say, 25.5 would meet that requirement. But, you know, I guess just for simplistic reasons here, we show 26 in that, I think the tree table that you're referring to, just for simplicity. But just to clarify, it has to be greater than 25. So if it were to be 25 feet, it still would not meet the requirement if you're looking to try to get parking on both sides. So again, just I guess sticking the whole numbers here, that's where that 26 came from, where it would have to be 26 feet or above. In this case, it's, you know, it gets really sensitive then trying to balance, like you mentioned about the parking versus the trees. But, you know, every foot counts here. You know, we're trying to balance that. And you know, our design team did the best we could to, you know, we heard the concerns from the first meeting, and that's where, you know, we increased, you know, the width by that 2.5 extra feet. But, you know, anything more then would start, I guess, compromising the whole outcome of the project, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Mr. Duffy, I'd ask about that during the design process as well. If there was a version of that we can implement in this, and to the design team's credit, they took it to heart, examined several different options there, but none of them were going to work logistically and meet the project goals that we looked for. So we were thinking alike during the design process, and we were able to take a look at that, and unfortunately, it just wasn't going to work for this project.
Okay, but I mean, I see that I appreciate that they gave a little bit and they gave us back an extra 1.5 feet or whatever, but I don't think it accomplished the main concerns, which was the parking. And I just wonder if there's any way it could be re-examined. And I mean, maybe even just for, as Gary mentioned, Kenmore 1, the city adjacent, the streets adjacent to the main, because we do get a lot of spillover parking. And like I've mentioned before, also, especially during events, everyone, even from from Webster back, or Webster down to 12 Mile, a lot of times people will just drive down to park so they don't have to walk all the way down the street to get to art fairs or whatever. And I think you're going to limit the amount of potential people that are going to join and be able to enjoy if you can't find parking, then where do you go? I mean, I think we're taking away a lot of spots, and I think that we're splitting hairs on you gave us a 1.5 feet, but you're trying to take back another 0.5 feet by just rounding up. So, I mean, it works both ways, right? I think that it really should be reinvestigated, and especially just where the trees are. That's really the only issue. And I've seen curved curbs before, so I know it's possible. And even if you just put a no parking sign right at the end of that curved section, now you've solved that issue. And the trucks will be able to pass by that area without a problem.
If I could mention something also, part of the issue is that's exactly what we're trying to avoid by being consistent citywide. We're going to have the same issue citywide. And, now we're building a road, so it's a little bit different, but we're going to have a lot of people asking for the same thing. And we're back to, if you do it for one, you've got to do it for everybody. I'm a firm believer in people treating people the same, being consistent. And we'll be right back to the problem we're in now, where we have signs that really don't belong there. They were done, 20 years as a stopgap measure, and they should have been removed years ago. And I fear that you're going to have the same issues all over the city with, if you just do it here, and then pretty much you're back to the same problem we're trying to avoid. Just kind of from my, and in previous meetings, I've said, and it's not that I don't care about trees, so don't take this the wrong way. If we could give everybody a 30-foot road, I'd be good with that, because that gives us more room. I'd be happy with that. Unfortunately, it impacts a lot of other things. Engineering is not my thing. Trees aren't my thing. But I do think we need to be consistent. And I think you're getting the same issue we have right now that we're trying to fix. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that I'm saying increase the road to 25.5 feet and have maybe some areas where it goes to 24.5, a very small scallop. And those areas where it's scalloped, that's where you put the no parking sign. So rather than have the whole side of the street no parking, you have it locally, anywhere there's a big tree that we want to try to keep or save. And maybe it's even something that the homeowner in front of the house, or the trees in front of their house, they have some say in the matter, and say, you know what, I'd rather just have it be the 25.5 feet and get rid of the tree, and let's move forward. We don't even need to eliminate that parking spot. Get rid of the tree. And again, to your point, I think that it is an important thing to have a consistent plan moving forward. And the fact that we're the first to deal with this, I think that we're going to see, or you're all going to see a lot of pushback from the rest of the city by eliminating parking spots. And I think this is going to be, we're trying to help the rest of Berkeley that is going to face the same situation that was kind of pushed onto you and us. It was there wasn't a whole lot of forewarning that we were going to be losing, or that all of Berkeley now is going to be losing our parking spots.
And if I could, I think there'll be a net gain of parking spots in the city. So there will be some people that will be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but I think we're anticipating there'll be a net gain of parking spots. It's just obviously anybody that loses the parking in front of their house. And I will tell you, I live on a street that is no parking in front of my house. So I live this every day. So I certainly understand where you're coming from. And quite honestly, it's usually not a problem. Once in a while it is. Once in a while I park on the street, but I certainly understand. I can emphasize with you completely. And it's not on my side of the street. It's on the other side of the street that parking's allowed. So
right.
I get it. I've been dealing with it for years.
Yeah. Mr. Duffy, I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak, and I've got hands raised and chats. I'd like to follow up with you with more personalized conversation, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Great. Then that'll give us a chance to incorporate everyone's comments, because I know there are people that will watch this later too. Yeah. I want to make sure that they knew that we got all these questions answered.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Next up is Bob Dorsch. I just asked you to unmute. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. It's Debbie.
Oh,
Debbie
hey.
Dorsch. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Well, we're one of the homeowners that got the dreaded knock on the door by Sean Young after the camera went in the sewer. So what I want to say about that, we had it looked at, and I'm just, since I have everybody else's attention, all the other homeowners who had that dreaded knock on the door, we can band together and try to find somebody that can help us all to help reduce the cost to us for the repairs that might be required. I just want to put that out there. So that's the end of that. And then, and I know I don't want to be redundant about the parking, but what I want to ask is, would you consider putting for the first couple houses north of 12, could you consider a no shopping center parking sign? Residents only, you know, if that could be a consideration. And that's about it. And then just out of curiosity, because I see somebody's asking about the bioswale, and I'm thinking it's going to be at what's currently considered the point where Cornwall and Kenmore split. And just out of curiosity, I want to ask what the surface of the bioswale will encompass versus what the current impervious surface is.
Ryan, can you help with this one, Ryan?
Yes, Ryan, just for context, just so you know, the question that was asked in addition is where it's located, and does the current forest part of the point remain the same and the turn around the island become a rain garden, or does some of the forest area also become some of the rain garden?
Yep. So I guess the bioswale is located, I guess it'd be south of that, the forest area. So we're eliminating the little turnaround road, and we're kind of shortening the nose of the existing island a little bit. And we're keeping the maple tree that's currently there. And that's going to be kind of the new nose of the island. And so that whole area from, I guess, south of the forest area, the fence line that's currently there to through the turnaround area is now going to be a bioswale. So it's going to consist of all, various types of plants. And, it's just, it's a fully pervious area that's going to encourage, absorption of stormwater into the ground, the filtering and the cleaning of the stormwater.
Okay.
So there's not going to be any pavement there once we're done.
Okay. And then just wanting to ask again, if you all might consider, whoever the DPS could consider, at least, doesn't sound like we're going to resolve anything to what we feel is our advantage as homeowners for the parking. So just again, asking if you guys might consider doing a no shopping center parking just for the first couple houses, just to discourage it.
And we will certainly talk about that. But
Mhm.
again, then that means every street off 12 Mile we have to be consistent, because if we put it on your street, we have to put it on every street. So, and I have found I've been here 4.5 years now, every time we try to fix something, we've made the problem worse somewhere else. And that's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're trying to do our thinking all up front. Every time we try to fix something, we make 1 or 2 people happy and we make 10 people mad because we moved the problem somewhere else. So we will certainly discuss that. I will tell you that for sure.
And I agree that, and I commend you for saying that you want to treat everybody fairly, but in all respects, not everybody has a shopping center on the corner either. I could see there's retail along 12 Mile, but we have a concentration of, I think, 6 storefronts, 7 encompassing our street alone. So that's, I think, different circumstances than what potentially could affect other homeowners.
Yeah, and another issue we have is we have almost no way to enforce that. Putting up signs you can't enforce.
Sure.
Because how do we know if that's not a visitor to one of your neighbors?
Sure.
There's a lot of issues with that. We will talk about it. I will tell you, I guarantee you we'll talk about it.
Okay.
It's really, really tough to do.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all we're asking.
Yeah, that's all. Just a consideration of, something
Look into
to
it.
discourage. Yeah, that's all. We understand that, you have to have certain ordinances and you can't necessarily enforce them, but just asking. Thank you.
Thank you. For the group, everyone, whether it's Derek or Ryan, one of the questions that were asked was, how long do we have until we absolutely have to replace the sewer line? Or is there potential to schedule the main sewer replacement once the road is torn up? Or, excuse me, I mean, replace the sewer line when the road is torn up?
Yeah, I can take this one,
Boy.
Tori. Again, we hope to learn very soon about the more definitive
That's right.
schedule, so that will be shared very soon.
Mhm.
I would not wait until the last minute or wait until the contractor is digging up the road to schedule your sewer line replacement. I think that's being a little too risky. So I would encourage everyone who has an issue to just keep pushing forward.
Unmute us.
If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call us at the DPW. I know Sean and I have fielded several phone calls from Kenmore and Cornwall residents. I'm hopeful that we've answered the questions to the best of our ability, to try to give folks a little bit of guidance on this, because it is a big decision and it is a expensive endeavor. But certainly if you have an issue, now is the time, because putting back that new road is just not going to be cheap. And so you can put that back now in a much more inexpensively as it relates to your sewer line connection. So again, don't hesitate to call us at the DPW. We've spoken with many of you. We're happy to help where we can. But I just would keep pushing on this to try to get the work done as soon as possible.
Thank you, Derek.
Tori, what
Um,
else is there
those-
in the chat as far as questions go?
That is all I'm seeing right now. Does anyone else have questions? As a reminder, again, if you take off your video, you can raise your hand that way, or under the reactions tab, there is the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen.
Right there.
Tori, real quick, if I
Oh.
could, I know Carrie and Gary are going to come in here real quick, but just I want to stress again the importance to all residents, those joining us this evening. Please, please, please sign up for those updates. We're going to continue to do the hand delivered notices, but those that sign up will be able to get these notices as quick as possible. And it also helps us because it gives us a more direct connection with some of the folks on the street. So thank you.
Go ahead, you guys.
Hi, I just had a quick question because a lot of our neighbors are considering redoing their sewer line, and a couple of people have mentioned a $5,000 bond that the plumber wanted. I guess I don't really know exactly what that means, but if we were to rip up rip up the driveway or the road, would we still have to pay to have to have a patch? Even
Carrie,
though the road is about to be ripped up? Could that be a cost savings to the residents?
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, you'd be able to, the contractor still has to backfill, you still have to have compaction, but you could actually put back cold patch on the top surface as opposed to, actual hot mix asphalt, concrete, the more expensive items, Carrie. So absolutely, it's going to be less expensive. I will touch on that bond issue because that has come up in a few of the conversations. The $5,000 bond and that's a bond that your contractor will place. And that's a bond that we refund as long as he does his job, we refund it immediately. So I know that a lot of plumbers might make an issue of that, but it's the purpose of that bond is to protect our public utilities that are in the area as well. So for instance, if that contractor damaged a public line, or frankly, potentially another private line, that's what that bond is used for. So I know we've had residents inquire about, lowering the bond amount and doing this or that. And I think for the protection of everybody involved, we don't want to do that. The bond, we refund it immediately when they're done and they've done everything right, that bond goes back 100% and it's returned to them quickly. So, don't let the bond deter you. I know it's a big number, but the contractor should place the bond. The contractors that work in the city, they've done it a million times. So it's for our protection. It's not just for restoration.
Okay,
Derek, plumbers shouldn't be charging homeowners $5,000
No.
on top of that price to,
No,
I want to make
no.
sure we're clear on that, because
Yes.
they will get that back. They,
That is-
they put that bond up, they get it back. They shouldn't be charging homeowners $5,000 that you never see again in the course of costing out these jobs.
That is correct, Matt.
Another question that we received from some neighbors is permit fees. Maybe you guys can talk about maybe quick estimated costs on that, if you have any idea. For example, like backflow preventer, or, is there, I haven't looked into it exactly, but there's probably a number value based on the dollar amount spent or something that you can throw out there.
Gary, I don't know. The building department would probably know that number. Sean, I don't know if you're on with us still, but do you happen to know that number, or maybe we just need to get community development to respond to that one?
Community development could probably answer that better, but the fees are pretty minimal for permit fees. As long as it's a registered contractor, you're talking less than $100 for
Okay.
And a while back, the city did waive the permit fees on specific to the backflow preventers as an enticement for people to go ahead and take that extra step in the course of a larger project.
and real quick, can you tell me what the material was, that you mentioned to patch the road?
Cold patch.
Cold patch. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so they should be, when they provide quotes, they should be using that as part of their figure then?
Yep. And just to be clear, they've got to still do all the proper backfilling and compaction. But when they get to that road surface, they don't have to put back that final hot mix, because obviously we're going to be coming through and tearing that back up when we put the road back in.
Okay, yeah, I thought that seemed like a waste of money if it was gonna just be torn up, but
Yep.
thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
As a note for everyone, I did include our community development page, permits page. So if you guys want to check out the fees there as well, you can reference that. Yeah. Next, I have a Jay Brown.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I just want to be 100% sure on this, that this does not include Kenmore 3 part of Kenmore. That block between Morrison and Webster.
Yes, and you are correct. And I'm getting used to the terms of 1, 2, and 3. So,
Okay.
but you are correct. So it bends around. It follows Kenmore. It does not go up to Webster.
Oh, okay. And there was a water main break in that across the street from me, maybe a month ago. And so, and it's got an asphalt patch. So does that mean at some point that's going to be torn up and that I need to do all this sewer checking and stuff? Because our street is paved now, but now it's got that big patch.
Sean, I think you can perfectly answer this question for her.
Oh, okay.
That patch you're seeing out there, that's cold patch. That's a temporary patch. Usually around May is when we start opening up for concrete restorations once the weather warms up.
Oh,
So the contractor generally, he's got a backup in the spring from stuff we're doing, but I'd say by mid-June or so that you should see fresh concrete poured there, and then it'll be back to looking normal again. I don't foresee any more digging up or replacing water mains in that section.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Tori, did we get a few more on the chat?
Taking a look real quick. No, just commentary. Yeah, nope. And then I
commentary.
just added the URL for people to reference the permits. Any other questions for the group?
Well, we are at 7:30. I want to thank all the residents for joining us tonight. and all the great questions. I want to thank the HRC team as well for a great presentation. I hope we were able to answer everybody's questions, and we look forward to what's next.
We continue to add to an FAQ for this project. For anybody visiting the websites. So if something comes up, if we end and you say, oh, I wish I would have asked this, please continue to send those. As again, we've tailored our outreach to your questions, and we'll continue to do so. So please keep those questions coming as you think of them, because if you have this question, you may find that several of your neighbors have the same one. It'd be really helpful for us and all of your neighbors to keep those questions coming.
One final thing, just to let your neighbors know, for those that could not make it this evening, I am recording this. So once it exports out, it will be added on the Kenmore page for everyone to view as well.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.